Cool. So I'll go ahead and just introduce this panel. So again, we have been kind of just looking at and celebrating some of the pieces that our students at DePaul have been writing this past year. And so this is our third panel on persistence. And we have Professor Royster here to lead us in conversation, and she's had a chance to look at all of your pieces ahead of time, and so we're really excited about that discussion. And so, you know, obviously we are coming out of a really difficult year and kind of going through these hard things. And so we're looking at how we write about them or how those things just impact our writing and how we listen. You know, a lot of us will be sharing our pieces, but we're all here to listen to the writers share as well. And so, yeah, this past year has taught us that we just can't ignore a lot of these hard things in and around us. We have a piece on beauty standards, and we have pieces that we've read on domestic abuse and systemic racial injustices. And so what does it mean to not only be a person in that, but also be a creator and a writer in the midst of that? And so thank you again for joining us for this panel and for your time on this beautiful Friday. I don't know where you guys are, but in Chicago, it's pretty nice and sunny. So thank you. And I'm going to hand it off to Professor Royster again, who is the chairperson for this event.
Thank you, Anna. I'm so glad to be here and so honored that Anna and Avery invited me to chair this panel and the chance to read the wonderful work that you're going to be hearing in just a minute. So I really appreciated how all of the poems really speak to this heightened moment and the importance of artists, and which all of us really are, to reflect on and think about this moment and to think about the language that we have and also the limits of language to express what we're feeling and to move things forward. So all of the works that you're going to hear are really powerful and moving in that way, to help us think about the occasion of writing. So I'm going to read their titles and names, and then I'm going to turn things over to the writers. We'll have a little conversation, time for Q&A. So without any further ado, we're first going to hear from Emma Ludman, who is going to be reading their poems, including Deadbolt. Jacqueline Penny is going to read Ode to Claire and Hunger. Corinne Witt will be reading A Time for Justice. Anna Hislop will be reading The Fruits of Whoring. Temitope Eredoyan will be reading Beauty, Another Ism, an essay. Rachel Lastos will read Love Every Minute. And Alexia Dukes will close with Mi Prima. And without further ado, I will turn things over to the writers.
I'm Emma Ludman, and this is Deadbolt. Spending my 20th year sleeping behind a deadbolt was not advertised in the brochure, but neither was glancing over shoulders at every intersection on the way to the train, the library, the corner store, looking for monsters nestled among rotting oranges. What the fuck is a safe space? Is it biting nails in cheap plastic office furniture, answering questions for a clipboard who's asking me to wear my scarlet letter like armor when I do not even know it by name? 12 months chewing the inside of my lip just to swallow blood like I swallowed words meant for him. Now I can't seem to stop shouting them at strangers. Rachel tells me that I cannot live in my head forever, but the Kool-Aid is so delicious, and I prefer to exist as a paper girl living between covers she can slam shut when the story makes it hard to breathe. Thank you.
So this is Ode to Claire. Oh, how I wish I was born a feline, to be plucky, shifty, shameless, a cat. This world tells me to be fine. How can one be content? It lies like rats. Crumbling, fighting, a mess, my heart it cries. More than sorrow, than pain, is this the end? A puss is not consumed with its demise. To be indifferent, how backward I'd bend. Alas, I was born to be simply me, broken, as much a mess as this world is. But who cares? We have trapped ourselves in debris, stagnant, waiting for a light in this abyss. A cat does not wait, it acts as it should. If given the chance to be a cat, I would. And my second was hunger is the thing with horns. Hunger is the thing with horns that ascends the tum and wails the song forgetting the lyrics, but never ceases to hum. How egregious is the rumble that is heard, but how wretched must be the goat that cries when its meal is stolen by the bird. The oft steals many goods and will always gloat. I've heard it in the wintriest realms and on the most intimidating mountains, yet failure to dismount him, he insatiably yearns to feast.
Hi, I'm Corinne, and this is an excerpt from A Time of Justice. Sabine left the room for a moment to go to the teacher's lounge to freshen up her cup of coffee and saw some of her friends talking by one of the water fountains. Something she found during her 8 years at Anderson Elementary was how quickly staff can turn into another family. Dee and Collie were sisters, and Helen was their cousin. They welcomed Sabine into their close-knit circle very quickly during Sabine's first year and were thick as thieves ever since. Today, Dee and Polly had their afros picked out and wore coordinating orange and purple suits with matching loafers. Helen chose to showcase a knee-length paisley patterned dress with a matching beret. Sabine leaned on the wall near Helen and smoothed a wrinkle in her green skirt as she listened to the three girls talk about their paychecks. Did you hear how the principal docked the black teacher's checks? Polly inquired. Because we took 2 days from work due to the snowstorm? But the white teachers did the same thing and got paid, Dee exclaimed. Well, you have to remember, the principals control who gets paid and who doesn't. Plus, it doesn't help that Principal Harvey favors the white teachers compared to our former principal, Helen mentioned. It's too bad the board got rid of Principal Rhodes. She always made sure we were all treated equally, even if it pissed off the white teachers, Dee chuckled. Sabine knew who Dee was talking about. Their first principal while they worked at Anderson was Principal Rhodes. She did not like that some of the white teachers would flaunt her rules. Sabine smiled as she remembered when Principal Rhodes threw her shoes during a staff meeting. During their professional development time, teachers were allowed to leave their rooms. However, white teachers felt they were above the law and broke this and other rules applied by Principal Rhodes. She was so upset that she took her shoes off and threw them at the white teachers. These are the shoes of the boss! You are not the boss of this school, Principal Rhodes had yelled. This became her mantra during meetings.
Hi, I'm Anna Hislop, and this is my creative nonfiction essay called The Fruits of Whoring. The scene was set like it had been staged. 2 half-empty glasses of red wine, one with a faded red lip imprint on its rim, about a dozen ripely pink strawberries bitten into and left behind, the sliding back door still partially open, through it his favorite guitars left standing on the patio. All of these inadvertent breadcrumbs made it abundantly clear that the house had been fled from in a matter of seconds. My family and I stood in the kitchen, immobile as we took it in. Through the open door, the perfect June day continued. The lime green tree leaves whistled in a gentle wind, and the locusts sang their song. Against these sounds of nature, I could imagine chairs scraping against the floor, glass hitting the granite countertop, and the front door slamming shut. Though the disorder of our kitchen disgusted us, none of us went to move anything. It all felt forbidden and essential, like its existence proved something. It was my mom who was the first to reach for one of the unfinished glasses and dump its remnants into the sink. Though she sighed heavily, her face revealed little and was locked into the same expression of pained apathy it had been all summer. After all, this scene revealed nothing new to us, other than the true extent of my father's boldness. We were 4 months into what would be a 13-month divorce process. The only thing new about this day was that it was the first one with an order of protection against him, one that hit right as he sat in this kitchen with his mistress. I wandered over to our open back door and visualized them sitting out there through the glass, drinking my mother's wine, laughing while he played the same riff on the guitar, their fruits of adultery reeking over my spot at the dining table. Though these images were afflictive, I could find pleasure in creating that moment he got the notification that the order had struck. I remembered what my older brother had said earlier about the possibility of him going to jail if he did not leave our house instantly, something that had riveted me. The image of them scrambling, panicking, squirming was frankly delightful. Being able to witness the aftermath of such drama was foreign to me and almost even exciting. It was so wrong and shamelessly obvious, the first true exposure I had to my father's affair. My family was yet to inform me that such an affair even existed. I had only a theory I'd arranged from conversations I had overheard while they thought I was asleep. Faced so blatantly with it now, I felt scandalized, as if I had been reading the story of a messy divorce in a gossip magazine, and now here I was standing in the celebrity home. Once my sister simply rolled her eyes and left the room, we all began to remember that this was our home and not some infidelity museum. Our initial shock faded, and we attempted to resume the afternoon as functionally as possible. I was headed upstairs to my bedroom when my foot hit something hard. I looked down to find one of my Barbie dolls laying half dressed on the staircase, her body stranded in haste equal to that in the scene in the kitchen. My brain could not process the reality of this violation as quickly as my eyes did. Bending down, I gently picked up the damaged doll and smoothed back her blonde hair. Was this really happening? I finished the journey to my room with such fervor that I stubbed my toe 2 more times on the stairs. Once I saw that the lid of my toy bin, usually filled to the brim with dozens of my collectible Barbie dolls, was left wide open, my surroundings dizzied. I did not have to wonder who was in here. I could already imagine the chubby hands of her gremlin daughter fishing around my room. She'd been playing with my toys, my closet, my life, misusing and reducing the dolls into nothing but abandoned plastic on the floor. Within the murky blurs of my vision, I saw their lifeless bodies scattered across my pink carpet. I started to cry. Part of me wanted to lie on the ground amongst them and allow myself to be naked and confused and alone like they were. Was I just as interchangeable? Sure, there's some dolls upstairs. Go play. Your mom and I will just be down here, laughing and drinking and pretending we're married. Go play like you are my daughter. There are dolls for you upstairs in someone's room. A faux family had played house in our glass home. The bricks around me were suddenly more fragile than the plastic ones painted on the walls of my purple Barbie dream house. This was no family home. This was now just a space to come and go, to use as needed and play in and run from. Anna, come down here, my brother's nasal voice called from back downstairs. I furiously grabbed one of the dolls to display to him as proof of the horror that had occurred in my room. Once I reached the stairs landing and my heavy footsteps paused, I could make out the distant sound of my mother's sobs from 2 rooms away. The doll in my fist became nothing, and I tossed her back onto the step where I had found her. Entering the kitchen, my brother and sister stood on either side of her, framing her as she sat deflated in her rolling office chair. Her long face was wet with tears that drowned her ability to speak. My older brother navigated the moment, his voice calm and controlled. I think we're leaving the house tonight. Okay, I was too afraid to ask why. I need to get out of here, honey. She spoke at last, her voice thick with sadness. Nothing more needed to be said. It was our turn to leave in haste, to escape to a temporary life not confined to the walls of our haunted house. We packed right back into my mom's Mercedes that we had so hopefully exited just a few minutes before. When my brother backed out of the driveway, I took in our home. Its red brick, the ivy that sprawled across the sides of it, the black shutters on every window. I had always loved it, been proud of it, and despite everything, the people inside of it. But now I saw it as any nameless family's home, meaningless and tainted. Down the block and away from all the afternoon had unpacked, my older sister grabbed my hand and squeezed it. She looked at me and smiled kindly, something she had done maybe only twice before. I squeezed hers back. My brother made some joke that made even my mom crack a smile. She reached up to the sunroof and allowed the warm day to proceed. Right then, connected by silence and sadness, we felt more real as a family than we ever had in the house behind us. Thank you.
I'm not sure if I don't see Temmie's name in the list of attendees, but I don't want her piece to not be shared because it's wonderful. So I'm going to read a little bit of it just because I think that it definitely deserves to be read. I've had the privilege of being in a lot of classes with Temmie, and her writing is incredible. So her piece is called Beauty, Another Ism, and it starts with a quote by Toni Morrison. Probably the most destructive idea in this history of human thought, originated in envy, thrived in insecurity, and ended in delusion. And that's from The Bluest Eye. Beauty, definition. I use beauty not only as a way to define the physical, but as a way to refer to you. I use society not only as a word that speaks to the collective, but as a way to refer to you. Beauty is like when non-Western nations opened their shores and the Western nations entered. Then it became apparent that there is a difference in societal structure. The Westerners are uncomfortable with this difference as they cannot see the beauty in the lives of non-Westerners. This birthed the idea, we need to save them. The failure to admit and permit the concept of difference, and that difference does not mean ugly or suffering, but nature, was a failure that permitted racism, sexism, capitalism, sizeism, and beautyism. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. This quote is vague, permitting the idea of difference, but even within the difference, equality exists. Even though this phrase has become a very popular definition of beauty in today's society, there is still a high number of people seeking and undergoing cosmetic surgery and procedures. The question becomes, who is beauty? Who is the beholder? According to the American Society of Plastic Surgeons, a global rise in cosmetic surgery is occurring. Statistically, 18.1 million surgical and minimally invasive cosmetic procedures were performed in the US in 2019, a number that has risen steadily over the past 5 years. This statistic covers not only Americans, but individuals from different parts of the world who travel to America to have an American plastic surgeon do their surgery. Who is beauty? Who is the beholder? In the abstract relationship between beauty and beholder, the common factor is the aesthetic. The idea of beauty for the beholder originates from taste, which is very subjective. Subjectivity permits the concept of difference. Thus, a person you consider ugly can be beautiful to another. This is the idea of beauty: subjectivity, vagueness, and abstract. However, what becomes of beauty when the beholder becomes society? The idea of difference is snatched, forming a collective societal standard. So who is society? The society, a collective body with pronouns, I, you, she, he, they. We are the society. If I and you and her and him make the society, then we must have created the standard, taking away beauty from the eyes of the individual beholder, hating the chance for difference. Beauty is the confidence in your difference, your beauty. This is what I think now, from my vantage point in Chicago. We form the collective standard. In an interview with a psychologist, Vera, her sister, and fellow traveler, we discussed the idea of beauty and beholder, and she explained her understanding and how societal standard for beauty becomes established. There's a standard of beauty nowadays: symmetrical nose, high cheekbones, big breasts, small waist, big butt, fluffy eyebrows, long eyelashes, plump lips. We know societal standards of beauty when we see them. A couple years ago, plump lips were considered ugly. Then someone, Kylie Jenner, one day saw the beauty in this form and had the power to project it, push it to the entire society, and now we're all jumping on the bandwagon. Angelina Jolie was one of the first people to surgically enhance her lips to look more plump, but this idea of plump lips did not become viral, a standard. You know why, she asked? No one paid attention. I, you, she, her, we, the society, did not pay attention. If one person brings out an idea and everyone is head over heels for whatever reason, it captures people's eyes and they think it's beautiful. Now that's how standards get established. That will be a standard of beauty. A person cannot set up a standard of beauty. The majority of people in society have to agree that it is beautiful. When Vera was a young girl, I was the younger sister. She showed me how to handle the bullies in school. I learned quickly, what we pay attention to grows. If Vera is a psychologist, I'm a philosopher. Immanuel Kant claims in his essay, Analytic of the Sublime, that beauty has to be universal. Therefore, for an object to be classified beautiful, there must be a consensus in which everyone sees that object as beautiful. Hence, Kant denies that beauty is subjective and accentuates the idea that even if it is subjective, it is agreeable, but still not beautiful. Kant emphasizes this idea by claiming that for an object to be considered beautiful, the viewer or audience must not have a preconception about it. Hence, the feelings the viewer obtains from that object will be immanent, genuine, raw, new, limitless, and sublime. Moreover, not only one person should experience these feelings, but every individual viewing that object at that present time should also encounter these feelings. Only through this process can an object be classified beautiful, according to Kant. Society is like this. When you, she, he see a new form of beauty, we are in awe, subconsciously coming to a consensus, calling that beauty. If the society, I, you, we, cannot attain this level of beauty, we make ourselves become agreeable, if not beautiful. Therefore, for beauty to become beautiful, the idea to look a certain way that fits the beauty consensus becomes present, obscuring subjectivity or taste. This is our reality, and this reality is inevitable. So I wish you were here to read this piece, but I definitely wanted to give her work the chance to be presented. So thank you.
I'm Rachel. This is called Love Every Minute. It's funny how the world spins and blooms and collapses all in one breath. A faceless man said that to me in a dream once. When I woke up, I thought about those words and dismissed them as crazy dream nonsense. But when the phone rang and my unbelieving brain had to piece together the meaning of Eric committed suicide, the truth of that phrase resonated. It felt like the world fell apart in one instant, though it went on spinning and blooming. I guess I was in denial because my first thought was, we need to help Eric. I stood there, silent with the phone to my ear. My life was collapsing around me, and all I could do was stand still and listen to the heartbeat of it all. At his wake, I felt like I was watching everything from behind a window, a filmy, rain-smudged window I could hardly see out of. Everything was real on the other side of the glass, but it was so distorted, it seemed like a surreal moving painting. Colors and shapes melted and blurred together from the movement, too vague to make out. When people talked to me, I became acquainted with a sensation of water sweeping over me. Their words had a heavy weight, but I couldn't grasp onto them, so they slipped and rolled away. Eric had laughed loudly, cared deeply. His vibrant aliveness and memory got me through the disorienting wake. Our theater friend group held hands around his casket, reciting a poem that had been chanted before each play. Live the moment, seize the day, love every minute, because there is only one today. I stepped outside from the funeral home into a world that was wet and sharp and yellow. The stars were near, and I could feel that he was somewhere. His energy vibrated off the bare branches of trees and echoed in the stars, stars that were breathing through the night sky, exhaling and inhaling through flickers. As I lay in bed that night, I stared at the September moon between black branches scraping the skylight above. This had been the worst part of my days, fighting back the image of Eric's last moments that I could only imagine. Redirecting thoughts to joyful times, a mental snapshot formed. It was at a cast party after the spring play. The life-charged May air and the natural high from theater had us all buzzing. Laughing breathlessly with friends, I looked up and caught Eric staring so sweetly from across the room. Standing in a group of friends, his attention apparently drifted to me, and a dreamy smile lingered on his face as he slowly looked away. It made me feel safe and profoundly cared for, solidifying our unsevered connection. A glowing Polaroid to cling to, even as the edges yellow and fade. I like to imagine he's still there sometimes. He's just watching from across the room with a dreamy smile. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alexia Dukes, and this is my piece of creative nonfiction entitled Mi Prima. Desiree and I were born in the mid-90s to proud Boricua mothers and red-blooded American fathers. In the throes of adolescence, we were plucked from the safety of diversifying neighborhoods and thrust into the malevolent claws of white flight America. With stunning ease, my aunt and uncle settled into the lifestyle of beer on a Friday night, dirt bikes in the backyard, pool parties, and muddy feet. And while Desiree's parents grew increasingly laid back, mine grew increasingly religious. It was important, Mommy said, that I stay away from fast white girls whose lenient parents were leading them away from the path of righteousness. Amid her warning, she never explicitly mentioned that my cousin was one of those fast white girls and my aunt one of those lenient parents. The years passed, and Desiree matured into a stunning beauty with the features of a Malibu Barbie. I wasn't so lucky. Children from her high school also often came over for a night of swimming, underage drinking, and playing billiards in the basement. This was much to the horror of my parents, who promptly scolded my aunt and uncle for their irresponsibility. It's fine, Nadine, Titi would say. If they're going to do it, I'd rather them do it in the house. I ignored the adults, tagging along with Desi and her friends, trying my hardest to exude cool. The older we got, though, the more I blended in. Suddenly, I was the hot big cousin who went to Purdue, and Des and I became each other's trophies. No boy had to boost our egos because, hell, we did it enough for each other. She'd grab my boobs and say, "God damn, I wish I had those things." I'd poke her stomach explaining, "Fuck, those abs are sexy." She had this way of squinting her eyes when she giggled. She could convince a nun to take shots of tequila. Trust me, she got my mom to do it. It was awesome. When Latin music came on, she would merengue until the floor smoked. She could fix anything from a broken heart to bad eyeliner. She was my best friend, my second sister, the apple of my eye, and the rhythm to my beating heart. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief are as follows: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Since their coining, much research has been conducted to debunk what some believe is a limited description of the debilitating emotion. But if there is any validity to Kubler's theory, I'm certainly in the second stage: anger. I'm not angry with drugs themselves. Concerning drugs, Freud once wrote, "We perceive an increase of self-control and possess more vitality and capacity for work. In other words, you are simply normal, and it is soon hard to believe you are under the influence of any drug." As much as it pains me to give that chauvinist some credit, he had a point. As time passed, drugs became a part of Desi's normal routine, and she relied on their chemistry, not just for that sensation of euphoria, but for the ability to function at all. This may come as a surprise, but I'm sincerely indifferent toward the man who charmed my prima into self-sedating. I wish he would have called 911 before deciding to save himself the embarrassment, but he's sick. I don't expect much logic from someone like him. I've reminisced on what I could have done better, but now realize there was nothing. It wasn't a man or a substance or an illness that took her away from me. It was a whole damn culture. My mother's strategy for keeping me safe from the lifestyle to which my cousin fell prey was based on prejudice and religiosity. I still don't agree with it. But every time I stare at Desiree's prayer card, I understand Mommy's adamance more and more. You see, the boy who introduced Desi to hard drugs was a neighbor boy, one whose parents often stopped by for a drink and a good time in the tiki-torched backyard of my aunt and uncle's attractive home. I would like to say that this was a shock, that my aunt and uncle were blindsided, betrayed by people they never would have suspected, but to do so would be a lie. After all, they are suburban parents. Suburban parents are content to believe their children are safe in the neighborhoods they populate. When their hometowns are infiltrated with people of color, they flee in fear of drugs or guns or their daughters dating undesirable men. But when an unassuming student opens fire in the local high school, or the girl next door is impregnated by the bad boy, are they forced to admit the role their money played in stoking the fire? Money allows for access to resources both healthy and unhealthy. Money paid for my cousin to attend festivals, swarming her Instagram with sweaty pictures rolling on Molly, ecstasy, or cocaine. When she told me she was dabbling, my suburban mentality prompted me to wink and assure her that I would keep her secret. All kids from the neighborhood experimented, after all. I wish I'd blown the whistle then, but I was already indoctrinated. The party rolled on for me, for her parents, for everyone. Desi's life slowly became oxymoronic. She was so disgusted by her parents' constant partying that she turned off her father's loud music, poured drinks down the sink, and threw people out of her room. But the next weekend, it started over again. She drank what they shoved in her hand, tolerated inappropriate flirtations from her father's middle-aged friends, danced, smiled, and assured us nothing was wrong. It wasn't until her rosy cheeks lost luster and her ribs protruded from a once athletic body that anyone said a thing. The years of flippancy caught up to my prima like the picture of Dorian Gray. When she wasn't faking going to work, she spent most of the day sleeping. Finally, Titi took notice and asked me to watch out for her because something was wrong. I gathered pieces of information strewn together from alarming phone calls and reported what I could back to my aunt. For months, she relayed these messages to my uncle, but to no avail. His response before grabbing a beer from the fridge was always, "You're overreacting." With that, he headed to the pool to entertain a slew of drunk teenagers and their parents. That summer, they found Desiree. She was wet, redressed, and lifeless on the floor of an apartment belonging to one of those drunk teenagers. I didn't see her deteriorate into a ghost of the bright-eyed woman I knew. For her, addiction was a quick killer. People will think it's strange, but I thank God for that. I always believed she would find herself and leave the suburban tar pit that kills so many while disguising itself as the American dream. She was a beach babe and dreamed of moving to the Keys where she could soak up the sun without judgment. I believe she made it there. I really do. Thank you.
Wow, thank you to all of the readers for these amazing works. Just so thoughtful and moving. Um, and I thought maybe I could just start off our conversation. This is directed to everybody, anybody on the panel who'd like to answer it. But the conference gave us such a great opening in terms of thinking about this theme of persistence. And I was wondering if um, any of you would like to just reflect on how you see the piece that you shared today or your craft, in this moment, and um, or any other ways that you want to think about persistence. So yeah, this is just kind of an opening to link us a little bit. So anyone who wants to jump in can.
I'll go. My piece is A Time of Justice. I only read a little bit of it because it's 11 pages long. It's a historical fiction piece. It's based during maybe like the 80s or 70s when segregation was still uh, going on, and well, it was going on, but like slowly becoming less and less of a thing. And I saw persistence a lot with this piece because the piece is about the Black teachers trying to get equal pay for their school because they felt like they weren't paid as well or enough in comparison to the white teachers. So I feel like persistence plays a huge role in my piece, especially when they are trying to just fight for equality at a time where equality wasn't really something that was going on yet. It wasn't as common as a thing as it's starting to become now. And I felt that it was just important to share a piece like this, but just because it's not really something that you would think about, like equality with teachers' pay, especially back then. And I thought that it was just something that needed to be shared, something that needed to be heard.
Oops. I just wanted to just comment on that, that I really appreciated that way that you conveyed this, the way that the need to persist is in some moments internalized by the characters and just like with them in an everyday way, and you really felt that sense of tension and heaviness. But also you saw how collective action was this other way of thinking about persistence. So you really gave us just a really great public and private way of thinking about the theme. So thank you. Yeah.
I just wanted to quickly say that it is so amazing, just the absolute wide range of topics covered in this. Thanks, Emma. Thanks for sharing. I know you said you had to go, but thank you so much. I just think the ground covered with this selection of pieces is, I can't even put it into words. So I just wanted to extend a big thank you for being vulnerable and sharing your work, because I know that these pieces, a lot of them are incredibly personal. So I just wanted to say thank you so much. I'm excited to hear more of the answers to this question, but I just wanted to say thank you.
I'll go ahead and jump in. I think for me, the persistence has come in really after this story. It's grief is an everyday battle, and Rachel read a piece about grief that was absolutely beautiful. So it was really nice having that connection and feeling like you're not grieving alone. But the thing about opioid addiction is, I think in the media, it's put into a certain demographic. We think about it as like affecting the rural, and frankly, a huge population that it's thought of as affecting is the Caucasian population. For Desiree, I mean, she was half Latin, half white, which is a whole thing in and of itself. But the two of us aren't really girls that you necessarily think of when you think about drug addiction or opioid addiction. And so the persistence for me has been like just consistently trying to blow the whistle, like I said in this piece, and say like, hey, it's happening over here. It's happening everywhere you turn. And so, just I thank the people that were instrumental in the Ted, Avery, in helping me to share this story, because it is so important that it gets out there for me. And it's a way for me to sort of keep the memory of her alive, and to make it sort of make sense and make meaning of the whole situation.
And Temi just joined us, which is awesome. So I think, Temi, if you want to take a little bit to talk about your piece, we read a little bit of an excerpt of it earlier in the session, but if you want to read a little more, or if you want to just take a moment to talk about it, we'd love to hear from you too.
Oh yeah, sorry everyone. I'm Tammy. I've had a really rough day today. Oh my God. So yeah, about my piece, it's about beauty, and I'm trying to, talk about how a lot of people don't know that beauty is another way of discrimination, of segregation in the world, but it is, and especially for women, right? It's like we have standards that the society is created that I don't know if we're aware of it or not, but I think we're aware of it, and we have the standards that kicks a lot of women out. And as of right now, it kind of limits what a woman could do in terms of like, if to be a model, you have to look a certain way. You know what I mean? You have to look a certain way, and that those kind of standards are kind of like telling other girls that they're not good enough. And also, like, sometimes, well, I don't know if you know who Saweetie is. She's like an American rapper. She literally said that her being cute or being considered being beautiful opens a lot of doors for her. So it's not just about talent anymore. It's about, and I feel like that's why a lot of women sell themselves now. And it's a really high, I'm trying to open my laptop at the same time so I can read. It's a really high rate of surgery. And when I started looking at the statistics, what really freaked me out is that starting from 13, there are statistics of girls at 13, like already like altering themselves. It's really sickening. That shows you that I don't feel like when we're little, we have standards as to how we want to look. The society kind of tells us how we should look, like, oh, this is what pretty is. This is what not too pretty is. So we're learning all these things from society, but at the same time, we are the society. So my problem is, if we are the society and we're creating the standards that are not really beneficial to a lot of women, so why do we keep keeping it up? Like, how do we even get here? Like, how did we? But then again, it is addressed in the story as to, we see, maybe someone sees something good, like, okay, yeah, I like it. I think she looks good, and I'm a celebrity, or I own a beauty magazine. So I push that out there, like, oh, this is what good looks like. And for some reason, the society accepts it. And that's how I feel like standards gets created. Right now, it's this hourglass, Kim looking type of body shape that's in style. And that's all you see on the red carpet. Like, even on the normal, like nowadays, like when I step out, it's a whole bunch of women that, and the funny thing is that when you even look at the statistics, more Black women get surgery done. So I think it's definitely about gender. It's definitely about race too. And over time, Black women, we've not really been the model for, you know what I mean? Like, oh, you look good. So it's not surprising that, of course, like, they feel like they have to change to fit into what the society, or what the society. I don't want to say, oh, white women create the standards, because they really don't. But to some extent, it's half and half. You know what I mean? It's half and half. But it's not even what we're gonna focus on today. But I'm trying to open my thing so I can read a little bit, and we could go from there. But it's taking so long. But yeah, any questions? I'll be glad to answer.
Thank you. Thanks, Temmie. And yeah, I mean, I know that we have another question out there. I was thinking with your piece, the way that you're, really thinking about the you in a critical way. It reminded me a lot of the work of Claudia Rankine, and how in her, it's a poem, extended poem, Citizen, she's thinking about the you, both in terms of like critiquing society, but also drawing people in, kind of both of those things. And so I found myself, yeah, thinking about really all the pieces that you're in conversation with these other writers and thinkers too. So another question was really thinking about who you're in conversation with, and how how important it is to gather other writers with us as we're thinking, to be in conversation with. But I also want to read Ted's question, because I can't ask all the questions. So Ted Anton is asking about the revision process, and so maybe we should go from there, because I don't want us to run out of time.
Yeah, I can answer that. So initially this piece was like, it sat on my laptop as like the first paragraph for like a long time. Like, I kind of just had that image. And then for my I took a creative nonfiction class with Dr. Faye last quarter, and I like turned it into a whole like fleshed out piece and stuff. And I read it as like my big workshop piece that I got feedback from the class. And like the students there were so intelligent and so helpful, and made me realize that like I was too attached to the memory, and I needed to give more space to like the characters of like my brother and my sister and my mom, because in my mind I'm like, it's my brother, but like I needed like to like flesh that out more. So I went back and I just really tried to make it like me, but like me through like my eyes now. So yeah.
I'll go. I wrote this piece in 2017. It was originally 3 pages long. I put it away and I never looked at it again until this year. I had taken a creative nonfiction class with Professor Rebecca, and I learned a lot of things in that class that I applied to this piece, and it kind of grew from there, from 3 to like 11 pages. And I just kind of started thinking more about what was going on historically, fleshing out more of the characters, trying to flesh my main character out, Sabine, who's actually my aunt. I just changed her name because I wasn't sure about like, copyright and stuff. But just fleshing out more of her character and seeing how she is affected by everything, but not necessarily just her, but everyone else as well that she's really close to.
So
Yeah,
oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to make a little comment on this too, because so I actually wrote both of my pieces for Mr. Anton's class, and I am such a procrastinator with my work. And so I like for my first poem, Ode to Claire, it literally, I think I turned it in like a week late because I couldn't even get it out. Like I knew I wanted to say something, but I didn't know what I wanted to say. I wrote it in one night and then I turned it in later. Yeah, procrastination does a lot of work. And so I just like turned it in later and then I had to revise it later for the class actually. And so it's kind of, for me, it was interesting to see what parts of it that I didn't want to change and then parts of it that I were just like, okay, this needs to go because this is not saying what I want to say. It sounds confusing, sounds weird, whatever. But that also is in and of itself is a bit of the persistence because I wasn't writing my pieces specifically to even like turn them into anything else other than class, but it kind of ended up being that way through revising it and through understanding the process, and I'm really glad I've done this.
I'd say so. I also was writing this piece for Ted's class, and I had several other people read it as well. And consistently across the board, what I always heard was that people wanted to hear more about what Des was like during her addiction period, which was the hard. That was really hard. Like I didn't really want to do that, but I think that it strengthened the piece so much. So revision for me it was pretty emotional. But I sat down and I put it in. And I'm glad that I did because I think it's part of telling the story is not always just remembering the good times. Bringing her, and actually Ted said this, like he said, bring her to life as she was. And she was, she was all of those. She was my sister and my cousin and my best friend, but also she was an addict. And, and that's a hard thing for me to admit in the story, but it's got to be in there. So that was kind of a little bit of my revision process.
I was actually in the class when Lexi and Temmie and Corinne, I think you guys all posted or presented these pieces in class. And with Lexi's piece specifically, I remember, and this is just a testament to the persistence of this piece. I remember telling you, like, if it hurts to write it, like, don't hurt yourself writing a piece because that's the last thing you want to do, even though, like, sometimes we want to write about these really difficult things so badly, but we hurt ourselves in the process. And sometimes really reaching back into those traumatic places can bring up a lot of trauma in ourselves. But hearing you read this again and reading it for a second time with the revisions, I'm just so thankful and so glad that you ended up persevering through that and really working through it and putting that in the piece. It was beautiful then and it's gorgeous now. So really, really thankful and grateful to hear it again.
Okay, I'll go. So yeah, I wrote this piece for a class too, but it was also a piece that I always wanted to write about. It was always in my head, so it was like the perfect time to like just go ahead and do it. So when I wrote it initially, yeah, I had to revise it. I had to like be more certain about like the stats I use and where I'm getting the sources from, because I mean, like, I'm talking about statistics. I have to be sure that they're like credible. I think I also had to put some ideas upper. I think I had to do that, like, because sometimes I was kind of delaying the main point to that. Sometimes we writers do that, but I had to push it up. And I really like that when I did it, like, okay, now they could easily get what I'm trying to say. Yeah, I think that was all I had to do for the revision. And it was, I liked it after I revised it too. Oh, you guys want me to read a piece of it, or it doesn't matter anymore?
If you want to read some of like the bottom half of it, because we read a little bit of the beginning half in the beginning of the session, but we didn't hear any of the last half. If you want to read that part, we'd love to hear it, I'm sure.
Okay, I'm gonna just read the last part, Society from Women Today, taken by the Beauties. Okay. Growing up, I noticed women were not simply judged on their skills, but also on their beauty. Quotes such as beauty in the brain, half of her beauty is her brain, are very common quotes used to compliment address women. My problem becomes, why must beauty be involved? Why must her beauty be acknowledged? Why can't she be simply complimented on her brain? If her beauty is not present, will she be missing something? Why is it a she or her? Why am I yet to hear handsome and brain? Like, oh, handsome and brain. Like, you know, Obama's so like he's smart. We don't hear, oh, Obama's handsome and brain, you know, we just hear he's smart. Like, no one talks about how he looks. But like for Michelle, she still gets the whole, oh, she's fashionable, oh, she's pretty, so she's the best dressed. Like, that's good. But it kind of like always, like when it comes to women, that's always there. You know, we don't even know that we're creating the standards, and we are subconsciously. So these are the ways that society tell women that beauty is part of their characteristics. And if you're not considered beautiful to the beholder, then you're missing something. You have to fix it. Yes, with a knife, with a needle, a thread, implants, bleaching cream, you have to fix it, girl, to be complete. Beauty, just another ism. Thank you.
Lexi, to answer your question, thank you for asking me a question in the chat. So I actually, my family is kind of like my circle of characters, because I mostly write creative nonfiction, and my strongest memories are all like obviously from my childhood and my family. So it's definitely been a process, but like I said earlier, it is really easy to brush over things because you just assume people will like know my brother is like this, or that my mom looks like that. So like I usually have to show it to someone that doesn't know my family that well or something, and then they like, I ask them like, what do you think of like my brother or like my sister? And it's like they're like, oh, I didn't really get, you know, I didn't really think anything of it. And then that's when I'm like, okay, I have to add, like in this piece I tried to give like a moment for like each of them, you know, like it was mostly about me and my internal process, but I tried to make it clear that like my sister was like moody, and like my brother was like such a leader in my family, and my mom was like obviously going through a really dark time, but she was like being really strong for us. So like, yeah, I tried to like give all that like a moment. Yeah.
Anna, have you had a chance to show your family your writing about?
Yeah, they're actually all here, which is so sweet. So yeah, it was like really, I was like getting choked up at the end because it was like they like obvious, like what you, to your earlier question about persistence, like my family, my siblings and my mom are like, we as a unit and individually are like, we have been through so much together, and they kind of defined persistence for me. So it worked out perfectly that I was put in this session.
Sorry, I have a new mouse. But any last questions? I think we have just a few minutes together before we have to go.
I have one final question. So some of the pieces that we've read as a whole for this conference have touched on this a little bit, but obviously, I think it's all up in our minds that the past year has been one of persistence. And so I'm wondering, is that something that we're writing about now, that we even want to write about? And if so, we've talked about kind of reflecting back on moments, or writing in the midst of it. And so I'm just curious, kind of an open question of what it might look like to write about the persistence of the past year.
For me in my writing, I kind of used it. Sorry, I had to have my camera off. My connection's really bad right now. Um, I used it kind of like as a little bit of catharsis because I wrote about, like I said, kind of like some escapism from what the world what like has been going on in the world with the pandemic. And then at the time I was writing this, there was like right after, I believe, the insurrection happened at the Capitol. So there was just a whole bunch going on. And then also writing with hunger, it's like definitely does, it's an imitation poem on Emily Dickinson, but it relates to like eating disorders, and it relates to all these different things that are going on. So it's kind of just like, I think catharsis was a lot of it for me, but also just like, sorry, I just lost my train of thought, but definitely that.
To quickly answer the question in the chat, is there a difference between persisting against the self and outside forces? I certainly think so. When I think about like my own piece, there is a sense of persisting against the sort of laissez-faire, we have money, let the party roll on attitude that is often in the suburbs. But that is, it's a lot. It was easy. It was almost easier for like me to personally forgive like my uncle, my cousin's friends, than it was for me to like forgive myself, for like feeling like I didn't do enough. So I think that there is a difference. I actually think that persisting against the self is worse and much harder. I don't know what you guys think with the last minute that we have. I'll open up the floor again.
I just want to say thank you to Professor Royster for being the host of this session. It was really a treat to have you here. Thank you so much. And again, thank you to all of you who read today. Thank you for being brave. Thank you for letting us hear your work. And thank you for everyone who came and attended and asked questions. This has been wonderful. It's been just an awesome opportunity. It's been awesome to hear from everybody, especially seeing people that we haven't really gotten to see this year because of this thing. So, and I don't know if you have anything you want to say before we end.
Quickly, to echo Avery, yeah, thank you all again. It's been a really wonderful panel and conference as a whole. It's just really neat to talk to writers about writing, and I think we've all missed it dearly. So this has been great. And I'm going to put the schedule link in the chat just one last time, because in a couple of hours there is one last event with two DePaul alum who are published authors. And so they have their reading and Q&A and discussion. And so if you're able to attend to that, it would be a great way to kind of end this whole conference as a bookend, if you will. So the link is at the bottom of the page, at that link right there. And thank you so much. And yeah, have a wonderful rest of your Friday. And again, thank you to Professor Royster for just being a part of this panel. We appreciate it.
And congrats to everyone graduating this year. Yeah, weird time to graduate, but congratulations.
Bye, Avery. Thank you.
Congratulations, everybody. Bye.